Well, so as you see, that's weaving the story together. We are hoping to bring something that tapestry from that, what that might mean for us, 21st century in Turramurra uniting today. Well, as we follow this narrative lectionary, we come to Solomon's dedication as the temple is completed. The passage proposed by lectionary begins with a short passage which Sue read for us, and reporting the intention that Solomon the king had to build a house for the name of Lord our God. For the name of our God, referring to the instruction that God gave his father David. It was, your son, God is talking to the David, your son whom I will set your throne is in your place, shall build house for my name. It's not you, David, your son will be building that kingdom. So when we hear the temple, when we hear from Solomon's this long prayer of dedication in chapter 8, which he offered at the opening of the temple. And if you have a time, like Sue mentioned, this is very worthwhile reading. We only have a portion from chapter 8. Whole of 61 verses of this chapter, which includes long prayer. Please take your time to read whole chapter of chapter 8. And the narratives of the early decades of United Kingdom began with Samuel in Samuel 1. If you know this two kingdom story, that is covering lots of Bible in the books in the Bible. When we arrive at 1 Kings, which we have today, we have reached the most powerful period in Israel's history, where Solomon is now, their most powerful time. Books of 1 and 2 Samuel have told about those names. There's a Saul and David. I'm trying to weave these characters and tapestry with these first 2 kings of Israel, Prophet Samuel and Nathan. That's the scene about Prophet Nathan is talking to the King David after his affair. David's battle with Philistine, of course, that's about enemy giant Goliath. And David's beloved companion Jonathan. We remember his unfortunate son Absalom, and as well as his wife Michal and Bathsheba. We know the story of Bathsheba, David looking from the palace. This morning then, all those stories together after that, we come to King of Solomon, the 3rd king of Israel. Under Solomon, Israel said to stretch Euphrates to Egypt. That's the from 1 King 4. That's the largest amount of land of all kings. Largest amount of land there were in the history of Israel. So this is high moment. This is holy moment. The greatest king of Israel, Solomon, prays to dedicate grand religious building, the temple, on the top of the highest hill of Jerusalem, the capital city of the kingdom, at the point of its greatest influence, the greatest power. And at this moment of dedication, Solomon assembled the elders of Israel, all the heads of the tribes, leaders of houses, and then before him to bring the Ark of the Covenant Lord out of the city of David, which is Zion. And then that's the bit Sue has summed up. Priests brought the Ark of the Covenant of the Lord to its place in the inner sanctuary of the house, the most holy place underneath the wings of cherub. And then priests came out of the holy place, cloud filled the house of the Lord. So this is indeed serious stuff. King with all his court, with all the elders, the heads of each 12 tribe, with priests, with Ark of the Covenant, all assembled at the place where Solomon, king in all his majesty and power, had arranged for the temple to be built. Then Solomon, he stood before the altar of the Lord in the presence of all the assembly of Israel, and spread out his hands to the heaven. He's praying. And he prays this long prayer of blessing for new temple in chapter 8. So this wonderfully wise, this insightful, discerning man, Solomon, his name actually derived from the Hebrew word peace, shalom. Can you see the similarity? Shalom and Solomon. This man became the powerhouse in the ancient world. But as we know, he did not always live as man of peace. Indeed, he used his 4,000 horses and chariots and 12,000 horsemen to good effect. We read that he ruled over all the kings from the Euphrates to the land of Palestine to the border of Egypt, that's covering long part of the land. Solomon was remembered as king over the greatest expanse of the land claimed by Israel in all of their history. He was warrior, and warrior kings were powerful, and he was exercising power ruthless in the way they disposed of the rivals for the throne to the enemies on the battlefield. He reigned, governed for 40 years, a long, wealthy, successful time. Yet in this passage, today's reading, he appears not as a powerful king. Rather, he is a humble person of faith. He stands before all the people, raises his arm, prays to God, who is to be worshipped in the temple. Now, the prayer of Solomon goes for, like Sue said, it's 30 solid verses, and there are 8 different sections in this prayer. Thank God we don't have all of 8, but we have 2 part of that reading and in the lectionary. In these 2 sections of this prayer, Solomon identifies 2 important features of newly erected temple. 2 important features. First is the fundamental reason why he built this building is to provide. Fundamental reason is to provide a focal point where people of faith can gather to pray to God. They gather to pray to God. Perhaps we may used to be hearing about temple in Jerusalem in a fairly negative terms. Events like Jesus cleared the temple of money changers or dove sellers who were exploiting people. We have story of Jesus was predicting destruction of the temple during his last days. For the centuries, people from all of Israel, they were required to bring their sacrifices to the priests in the temple to offer up the firstborn of their animals and first fruit of their harvest. They may have formed rather negative understanding of temple to us. But today, this morning, I simply want to highlight that Solomon, he makes it clear that fundamental purpose of the temple was to provide a house of prayer. Make a house of prayer, a place where people of God could gather. Temple was to be a place of piety for the people. It was to foster the sense of connection with God. It was to deepen the life of faith of the people. So we read in the first part of Solomon's temple prayer, for the people of ancient Israel standing in the shadow of this wonderful new building, prayer might encourage a strong sense of self-identity. Blessed to be part of the people of God. It had strong positive purpose for the people. But that is not where this prayer ends. Second key element of Solomon's prayer today is that part is quite striking. It's more than we expect. It is striking. It is about the prayer of foreigner. It is about prayer of foreigner who is not your people Israel, who comes from distant land because of your name. Prayer from foreigner. And now that is incredible. Incredible prayer for King of Israel to pray. It reflects the openness to the world beyond the nation, reflects the engagement with wider geopolitical and social relatives of the world at that time. Solomon, the king, was not inwardly focused on his nation. He had outward orientation. He did not want to temple, simply to foster holy people, like the group of my people, shut off from the world. He had other intention. He wanted the temple to be a holy place of welcome and invitation, open to the people from across the region. Far beyond the territory of Israel, gathering people for all of the people. So as Solomon hoped, as Solomon prayed, God embraces people of all nations, not just one. So these are the questions in my mind as I was reading, particularly relating to prayer of Solomon. Something like this: how do we foster relationship with God in our prayers, in our churches? What is churches? What do they mean to us, to mean to you? How might we position foreigners, people most unexpected to us? They feel welcome to come into our church, to be home in our midst, to connection with God. How new people make this and feel this for their home. What do we do that? Our best response to this prayer of this discerning man of wisdom, the warrior King Solomon, our response could well be for us to live out our lives to response of that vision of what a place of worship and community of worship might be. That's our response to that vision. And that shape of a place open to all, a people of welcoming of all who wish to come and make connection with God. Well, as I mentioned about 2 years ago, there's an ABC television show called Making Australia Happy. It was 2010, so some of you have watched Making Australia Happy. That was about 8 volunteers who want to become happier. They want happier life. I don't know why, but this suburb called Merrickville, we know Merrickville was voted as the Australia's most miserable suburb. I don't know why. All of 8 volunteers, they live in the Merrickville that stage, and they're trying to get people who are living most miserable suburb. How you make them happier through this series? They represented a range of ages, background, they all different life circumstances, but they shared. They wanted to be happy. They shared the desire to get happy. And they have these 3 experts group was given number of tools to increase happiness over the 8 weeks. One of them is Anthony Grant. Dr. Anthony Grant is one of these 3 experts in this series. And he wrote this book called 8 Steps to the Happiness. This book coming out of this series, How You Make Australia Happy. So based on this series, he wrote this book, 8 Steps of Happiness. In his book, he records the details of 8 participants experience their changes to be happier. For example, they helped out a couple of hours at the Exodus Foundation in Ashfield. Some of the participants helped in the kitchen, while other participants, they waited on the table. Some of them initially quite anxious about interacting with so many new people, but they were extremely grateful. After that service, they were extremely grateful for this experience. After volunteering at Exodus Foundation, do the acts of kindness, Dr. Grant took sample of everyone's saliva. They took the sample. He took the sample before the service and after the volunteering session. And there were amazing boost, about 35% of this antibodies I can't quite read this, but that's this quite increase of 35%, this hormone, which this hormone protects the body from common illness such as colds and flu. So their body immune system had a lot better even that after short time of service. And it was significant result for just 2 hours of volunteering. And one of the 8 steps for living meaningful and fulfilling life in this book, one of them, a 4th one by the way, it's a practice gratitude. Practice gratitude. That might make you happy. If we take the time to feel grateful, life seems to be better. Appreciating something involves taking time to notice it and then acknowledging its values and meaning. This creates positive emotional connection. Well, I picked up this book at the flea market actually yesterday. It's a book called Happiness Trap, and I picked up, and last night I just went skipped through if there's anything about Thanksgiving, be grateful. This book talking about slightly different skills become happier. It's calling thanking your mind. It's kind of talking to yourself, thanking your mind. That's about thanking yourself for producing never-ending stream of thoughts. So continue to talk to yourself. Be thankful. Be grateful. Don't be too negative. This is actually a brand new book. I was lucky to picked up yesterday. And this book suggests this change of perspective, change of attitude could help you remain positive, remain resilient over the different life challenges. Well, fundamentally, Solomon's this long, personal, detailed prayer that comes from his thanksgiving towards what God has provided. It was about his thanksgiving. As we know, his life, the king's life, is filled with lots of challenges. He had made mistakes. We know how many wives he had. There's many stories. But when you don't give up, and when you continue to try to follow God's guidance beyond your weakness, beyond your imperfections, like Solomon's story takes a significant part of tapestry of God's grace, grand narrative of salvation. He takes a significant part of that weaving of story. You and I will be part of that story. And you and I will continue to write that story through our lives, through our service, through our witness. So as we remember yesterday, also our lives committed, continuing our journey, we say, thanks be to God. Amen.